The snow fell softly across the Dakota plains, each flake drifting down like a whispered secret from the heavens above. The winter wind sang its ancient song through the bare cottonwood trees, and the world seemed to hold its breath in the gathering dusk. It was the kind of evening when travelers sought warmth and shelter, when families drew close around their fires, and when the land itself seemed to pull inward against the cold. But on the frozen trail leading away from Fort Pierre, a young woman sat alone in the snow, shivering beneath the darkening sky. Her name was Catherine Hayes, and she had traveled nearly 2,000 miles to reach this desolate place. She had come by train and stagecoach, by wagon, and finally by hired sleigh, all the way from Boston to meet a man who had promised her a new life. His letters had been kind, his words hopeful. He had written about his ranch, his dreams, his need for a good woman to share the frontier with him. Catherine had believed every word. She had packed her few belongings, said goodbye to the orphanage that had raised her, and journeyed west with nothing but hope in her heart. That hope now lay shattered in the snow beside her, as broken as the promise that had brought her here. The man who was supposed to meet her had taken one look at Catherine as she stepped from the sleigh. His eyes had traveled over her threadbare coat, her worn boots, her pale face marked by exhaustion and hunger. He had seen not a bride but a burden. Without a word of explanation, he had climbed back onto his horse and ridden away, leaving her standing in the snow with her single carpet bag and a heart full of confusion. The driver of the sleigh had apologized. Truly he had, but he could not take her back. He had another delivery to make before nightfall, many miles to the north. He had left her there with her bag, promising to send help if he could, though they both knew the promise was as empty as the winter wind. Now Catherine sat in the snow, too tired and too cold to cry anymore. Her feet were numb inside her boots, which had worn through during the journey. The thin soles had finally given way completely an hour ago, and she had been forced to remove them, her stockinged feet now buried in the snow. She had wrapped her shawl around them, but it did little good. The cold seeped through everything, finding its way into her bones, her blood, her very soul. She thought about lying down, just for a moment, just to rest her eyes. The snow looked almost soft, almost welcoming. She had heard stories about people who froze to death, how they simply fell asleep and never woke up. Perhaps that would be a mercy. Perhaps that would be better than this endless cold, this terrible loneliness, this crushing weight of knowing she had no one and nowhere to go. Catherine closed her eyes and leaned back against her carpet bag. The snow continued to fall, covering her shoulders, her hair, the folds of her coat. She barely noticed anymore. The cold was becoming something else now, something almost warm, almost gentle. She felt herself drifting, floating, leaving her body behind in the snow. Then she heard it, the soft crunch of footsteps approaching through the snow, the quiet breath of something large moving nearby. Catherine forced her eyes open and found herself staring into the pale blue eyes of a wolf. She should have been afraid. She should have screamed or tried to run, but she had no fear left inside her, no energy for terror. The wolf regarded her calmly, its thick winter coat dusted with snow, its breath making clouds in the frigid air. It tilted its head, studying her with what seemed almost like curiosity, or perhaps concern. "I'm sorry," Catherine whispered to the wolf. "I have nothing for you, no food, nothing of value." The wolf's ears pricked forward at the sound of her voice. Then it turned its head and looked back the way it had come, as if waiting for something, or someone. A moment later, a man emerged from the swirling snow like a spirit materializing from the winter itself. He moved with quiet grace, his footsteps sure despite the deepening drifts. He wore buckskin clothing decorated with intricate beadwork, and a thick buffalo robe hung from his shoulders. His long black hair was braided with care, and a single eagle feather was tied at the crown of his head, where a yellow arrow now seemed to point in Catherine's fading vision. His face was strong and weathered, his dark eyes taking in the scene before him with immediate understanding. He spoke a single word in a language Catherine did not know, and the wolf moved to sit beside him, obedient and calm. The man approached Catherine slowly, kneeling in the snow before her. He touched her face gently, feeling the coldness of her skin, then looked down at her feet wrapped in the inadequate shawl. His expression hardened with anger, though Catherine somehow knew the anger was not directed at her. He spoke to her in English, his voice deep and measured. "You are very cold. You must come with me now, or you will die here. I cannot walk, Catherine said softly. My feet. Without another word, the man removed his buffalo robe and wrapped it around Catherine's shoulders. The warmth of it was shocking, almost painful after so long in the cold. Then he reached down and carefully unwrapped her feet, examining them with gentle hands. He spoke again in his own language, words that sounded like a prayer or perhaps a curse against whoever had left her this way. From a pouch at his belt, he pulled out soft pieces of rabbit fur. He wrapped each of Catherine's feet carefully, his movements practiced and sure, then pulled thick moccasins from his pack and eased them onto her feet over the fur. The moccasins were far too large, but he tied them securely with leather straps, making sure they would not slip off. Better, he said simply. Then he stood and held out his hand to her. Can you stand? Catherine tried. She truly tried, but her legs would not hold her. She had been cold for too long, still for too many hours. The man nodded as if he had expected this. He turned his back to her and knelt down. Hold on, he said. My name is James Thundercloud. I will carry you to safety. Catherine wanted to protest, wanted to tell him she was too heavy, that he should not trouble himself, that she was not worth saving. But her voice would not work anymore, and her vision was growing dim. She felt him lift her onto his back, felt his strong arms hook beneath her legs to hold her securely. The buffalo robe surrounded them both, creating a cocoon of warmth. He stood with her weight as if she were no more than a child, and began to walk through the snow. The wolf moved beside them, a silent guardian in the growing darkness. Catherine rested her head against his shoulder and felt tears finally come. Not from sadness now, but from something else, something she could not quite name. Gratitude, perhaps, or wonder that kindness still existed in a world that had shown her so little of it. Why? She whispered against his back. Why did you help me? James Thundercloud was quiet for a long moment as he walked, his step steady and sure. Finally he spoke, his voice carrying through the winter air. The wolf found you. She brought me to you. In my people's ways, this means something. It means your spirit called out and the spirits answered. It means you were not meant to die today. He paused, adjusting his grip slightly to hold her more securely. Also, he continued, I know what it is to be abandoned, to be left behind by those who should have cared. No one should die alone in the snow because another person lacked honor. Catherine felt something warm spreading through her chest, something that had nothing to do with the buffalo robe or the moccasins. It was hope, fragile and new, like the first green shoot pushing through frozen ground. Where are you taking me? She asked. To my winter camp. It is not far. You will have food, warmth, and safety. When you are strong again, we will decide what comes next. But tonight you live. Tonight, you are not alone. The snow continued to fall around them as James Thundercloud carried Catherine Hayes through the darkness, the wolf padding silently beside them. Behind them, her old boots lay abandoned in the snow, already half buried and forgotten. Ahead, somewhere in the winter night, a fire burned warm and welcoming, and Catherine, wrapped in furs and carried by a stranger who had become her salvation, felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt protected. She felt valued. She felt, against all odds and reason, that perhaps her journey west had not been a mistake after all. Perhaps every painful step had been leading her exactly where she needed to be. In the arms of a warrior who understood the true meaning of honor, Catherine Hayes finally stopped shivering. And in the quiet space between one heartbeat and the next, she understood that sometimes salvation comes not in the form we expect, but in the form we need most. The plains stretched endlessly around them, white and wild and free, full of possibility and promise. And somewhere in the distance, barely visible through the snow, a warm light flickered and grew stronger, calling them home.